balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective with me, your host, Rick Thomas. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, we had an interesting happening with the trial today. A couple of trials things happened, first of all, of course, and I'm not really going to go into it because I'm sure all of the right-leaning media outlets have all been talking about. Of course, Stormy Daniels took the stand today as sort of a surprise, I think. At least to the Trump team, at least it was to Donald Trump. Don't know if his lawyers were prepared for it or not, but anyway, she took the stand. I'll probably have more on that tomorrow. But the other thing that has just come out is Judge Eileen Cannon has indefinitely postponed the trial date for the classified documents trial. That was just announced, and the reason being is because of the fact that there apparently is some outstanding items that they need to address, 8 different items in particular, motions in particular that they all need to address, and she doesn't believe that they're going to be able to get all of that done by May 20th, which is when the trial was supposed to start. Honestly, given the fact that, Jack Smith has admitted to evidence being tampered with, not necessarily that he did it, but evidence being tampered with, I'm really surprised that thing's even going to be moving forward. But I'm sure other motions will come out and so on and so forth. So we'll have to see what goes on there. All right. Before I get too far into it, let's go ahead. And if you are of a mind, please stand, take your hat off, cover your heart, and join with 3 Chevy of Rumble in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And, of course, thank you for that. If you want to get your voice heard stating the pledge, please go ahead and record yourself. All you have to do, really, is just use a recording app on your phone, and it'll put it into a file. I don't care what the file type is. I can handle most of them, but once you get it in that file, then just email it to me at fans, F-A-N-S, at americanperspective.online. That's fans at americanperspective.online, and I'll get you into the rotation as we start with the Pledge of Allegiance at the start of almost all programs. I have been known to miss it a couple of times. But anyway, so I the Whiskey Warriors who are out there in Chatland across the various locations will always remind me if I miss it. So, but I'll do my best to get you guys on. So once again, send that off to fans at americanperspective.online. Okay. Now let's talk about what's coming up here really quick before I get into the rest of the program. And before I start talking about that, I need you to head off to flagshirt.americanperspective.online. And why, you ask? Well, that's really very simple. If you go to that website, flagshirt.americanperspective.online, you will receive a $5 coupon code to enter at checkout at a place called theflagshirt.com. That's theflagshirt, all one word, .com. Now, they have a sale going on right now. Did you know May 18th is coming up? That's right. In just a little under 2 weeks, is Armed Forces Day. And they, at the Flag Shirt, being the patriotic people that they are running a sale right now with patriotic savings across the board with packages on shirts and hats and all kinds of different things. Go to theflagshirt.com and check out their patriotic savings section in order to find all kinds of shirts and hats and sunglasses and all kinds of packages put together just for you to show off your patriotic pride, like I do every show, wearing one of their wonderful cotton polo men's shirts with all kinds of designs. Tonight I think I'm wearing the Mount Rushmore shirt for it. But head on over to theflagshirt.com, pick out your patriotic set, get it off. It's on sale. Believe me, they are really on sale. You should check out these prices for these kits. They're great. And don't forget to go to flagshirt.americanperspective.online and grab that $5 coupon code as well, so you can get an additional $5 off what they're already putting on sale for these items. Go to theflagshirt.com and get yourself patriotized. All right. So, one thing that has always amazed me, and it isn't just now, because it's every single election cycle we always hear about this stuff. The elections are supposed to be secure and protected. And our elections, especially over the last 3 election cycles, have been questionable at best. And the reason I say questionable is because obviously in 2016, the Democrats were crying foul and calling election interference on the Russians. Well, we all know that was false. But what did come out, though, is that, yes, foreign entities do tend to want to interfere in our elections. In particular, you're looking at places like the Chinese Communist Party and Russia. But the reality is that while we're trying and focused a lot on what is going on the outside of our country pointed in, we're missing the parts and pieces that have created, let's say, creative ways that elections can be subverted here in the U.S. And I've got a few of those things coming right up. But first, and honestly, this is kind of what triggered it. There was a big old thing on the socials where all of the Democrats are coming out and saying, my name is such and such. I'm so-and-so old, and I'm voting for Joe Biden because blank, whatever. And so, a lot of people are, and it's mostly Democrats too, and they're talking about they're voting for Joe Biden. Well, thankfully, some Trump supporters came out, did the exact same thing, copying it, and then say, I am not voting for Joe Biden. I'm voting for Donald Trump. And so it looks like it's kind of a bit of a war. It's kind of a bit of a war that's going on, at least on X, with them going back and forth. But here's the thing. We can sit here and talk about that. We can say things all we want, but without any kind of voter ID verification at the polls, we are essentially not verifying anything in terms of things like signatures and so on and so forth. Now, here in Washington, I've had several conversations with regards to mail-in balloting, and even the New York Times was talking way back in the early, 2010s. I think it was like 2010, 2015, somewhere in there, where they had an article where they talked about all of the different ways that mail-in voting can be used to subvert the system and be used for things like fraud. But it's okay when a Democrat wins, everything's cool and copacetic. But when it comes to Republicans getting it, well, then it becomes fraud. And that's nothing unusual, realistically, because of the fact that, you know, that's the way the dim Dems kind of work things out. But here's the thing, though, is that the Democrats have this elitist mentality. And it's not just with voting and things of that nature. It's a overall I'm better than you mentality. And what that turns into, of course, is in some cases, depending upon what's going on, is a form of what's called soft bigotry. Now, Kathy Hochul is the latest person to demonstrate this. But I want to go back and remind some people in terms of Democrats and young voters who are Democrat and are likely to vote Democrat on some of our universities. I want to go back in time because this is, now, I don't know if anybody knows who Ami Horowitz is. Ami Horowitz goes around on the street, and he most recently tried to get into wear an American flag themed shirt into one of those pro-Palestine protests or pro-Hamas protests, whatever you want to call them. And he tried to get in there and was summarily pushed out by some of the organizers. And in fact, even my understanding is, at least reportedly, he took some bumps and bruises for that. He was like thrown down the stairs and physically assaulted and that kind of stuff. But Ami Horowitz goes around and he asks questions most of the time of stupid liberals about certain things. And this is a 7-year-old video, by the way. This is 7 years old. And I want you to listen to this video. I'm going to play it. It's roughly 4 minutes long, 4 minutes and 20 seconds long. And I want you to listen to this and really, really listen to what he is not only asking these. It starts off with the liberals, and then listen to what the black folks have to say about it. Let's go ahead and take a listen here.
I'm Ami Horowitz, and I'm here in Berkeley, California to find out if voter ID laws suppress the black vote. Do you have an opinion on voter ID laws?
Yeah, they're usually pretty racist and they're bad.
I think voter ID laws are a way to perpetuate racism.
Would you go as far as say those laws are racist?
For sure.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely.
Tell us how.
Because they're less likely to have state IDs.
Minority voters are less likely to have the kinds of IDs that have been described or required.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they can get identification.
You can always get IDs you do over the internet. Does that also make it difficult for black people in particular?
Yeah, you have to have access to the internet. You have to be able to pay an internet service provider for certain fees.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
A lot of people have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed.
I also think there's a repression of black voting with how if you're a convicted felon, you're not allowed to vote and everything. And when you look at swing states like Florida, that's a huge population of the African Americans.
Now I'm here in East Harlem to ask black people their thoughts on what you just heard. Do you have ID normally? Carry ID around?
Yes, I have state ID.
Do you carry ID?
Yes, I do.
Do you know any black person who doesn't carry ID?
No. Everyone that I know has an ID. Why would they think we don't have ID? That's a lie. Why would they say that?
Do you have ID?
Yes.
Because I have my ID and my friends have their ID, so like we know what we need to carry around.
Yeah, everybody that I know have ID. Like, that's one of the things you need to walk around with New York with, an ID.
Do you know any black adult who does not have ID?
No, I don't.
Is it a weird thing to even say that?
Yes, it is.
What is this, some type of trick candy camera?
I know, right?
That's the only thing I brought with me.
Those are legit IDs. I heard a lot also that black people can't figure out how to get to the DMV.
Really?
What does that say to you?
I know it's that, on 25th Street.
Do you know where the DMV is around you?
It's on 125th Street and 3rd Avenue, I believe.
You know how to get there?
Yeah.
Would you have a problem getting there if you had to get there?
No.
I know these sound like silly questions. You know how to get to the DMV?
Of course.
You know where it is?
Yes.
You can get there?
Uh-huh.
No problem.
No problem.
Just checking.
Okay.
And I also heard a lot that black people, especially poor black people, have no access to the internet, can't figure out how to use the internet.
That's just stupidity, honestly. Everybody has access to the internet. Even a little kid could figure out how to work the internet.
I had access to the internet for years.
You know how to use it properly, right?
Exactly. I do it at work. So, of course, I know how to use it. My kids know how to use it. They all have iPads, iPods, whatever.
Your phone has data?
Mm-hmm.
You can actually
Unlimited.
Unlimited data.
Mm-hmm. I use my phone as a hotspot.
What does that say to you for the people who have this perception of black people?
They're pretty much ignorant. That's what my thought process was.
I just think that's ignorant. Ignorant.
Ignorant. That's the word I'm hearing a lot.
Ignorant.
Ignorant.
Very, very ignorant.
Does it sound racist for somebody to say that?
I think it is a little racist because, you're putting people in a category and you have no idea what you're talking about.
Maybe a little bit of racist in it, but like I said, I think it's more stupidity and ignorance.
You're judging somebody, but you're judging them because they black, saying that they don't got it.
What people are they talking to? Who are these people talking to?
Do you have a problem that if you go to vote and they say, "Can we please see your ID to make sure you are who you say you are"? Are you
Love
cool?
showing my ID.
You got no problem with that?
Nope.
Would you have a problem if when you go to vote, if they say, "Can we please just see your ID to make sure you are who you say you are"? Do you have an issue with that?
No.
Would you have a problem if there was a rule where you have to show your ID in order to vote?
I don't think so. No.
Would you have an issue if there was a rule saying you got to show your ID before you vote?
Nah.
Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
All right. So obviously, this is just a demonstration of the. Now, they were being, I'm going to be honest with you, they were being nice by saying that it was ignorant. And no, Mark over at Facebook says this video was in 1917. No, actually, it was 7 years ago. It was just 7 years ago that video came out. Here's the thing. They've been, and by they, I mean the left has been like this even in the Obama years. Okay? Even in the Obama years. And even before that, the left has always been this way. And the reason being is because they have what is considered to be the elitist mentality that manifests itself into what's called the soft bigotry of low expectations. You look at videos like that. Now, honestly, he did some cutting. That was obvious. Different people, different conversations, so on and so forth. I'm sure there's a lot more of that. But the thing about it is that that's the way they think. That's exactly the way the left thinks. Now, he admittedly only caught people on Berkeley campus, UC Berkeley, which is a haven of leftist ideology and leftist stereotypical. I mean, if you want to go someplace that really and get a good flavor for leftists, yeah, that would be a good place to go, because all it does is breed leftist ideology in that particular respect. But the thing about it is, though, is that it's not just the deep left. It's almost all leftists. They all seem to believe that they are better than everybody else. Poor people don't know how to operate computers. and all these other things that are out there. Now, you take a look at that, and that was, again, just 7 years ago. Okay, and even before that, like Eric Holder was making comments about how, 25% of blacks don't have ID. And I've done episodes on this before, but it always seems to amaze me for whatever reason that here we are in 2024. Everybody has a cell phone. In fact, I don't even know of anybody that has a landline realistically anymore. And even if they do, it's like not being used very much. And yet these people seem to think that, again, that certain segments of society have absolutely no idea what a computer is, what ID is, where to get an ID. And here's why I'm bringing this up right now. So Governor Hochul, this is in the Post Millennial, and actually hat tip to Mrs. Whiskey who put me on to this story. But Governor Hochul was at a public conference, and she says that black children in New York don't know what computers are. Now, here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play this for you so you can hear this.
Young black kids growing up in the Bronx who don't even know what the word computer is. They don't know. They don't know these things. And I want the world open up to all of them, because when you have their diverse voices innovating solutions through technology, then you're really addressing society's broader challenges.
So, wait, what? This is the governor of New York, and she is claiming that kids in school in her state don't know what the word computer is. They don't know how to operate one. How in the heck? Okay, look, being able to actually manipulate a computer, I'm going to be honest with you, some people get it, other people don't. I mean, I've worked my entire life essentially doing things with technology, and so stuff like this just sort of, it's a bit shocking to me at times when I run across somebody who has, limited experience, but they're not completely idiots to the point where they have no idea what a computer actually even is. Okay, so, they would at least be able to identify one. I mean, anybody who has like a television has seen a computer inside of movies and television shows and things of that nature. I mean, everybody's heard of a computer. We're living in 2024, for God's sakes. And no, I'm not using his name in vain. But this is the mentality of the left, folks. This is the mentality. And this is part of the reason why the left constantly is using this as an excuse to eliminate voter ID across the states. They want to get rid of voter ID because of the fact that they know that voter ID is the only way to reduce, if not outright eliminate, voter fraud. Which brings me to my stories tonight. Here in the this is in the Epoch Times. Democrats seek rejection of GOP election integrity suits in Nevada and Michigan. Now, I had kind of mentioned this, the one in Nevada here not too long ago, but lawyers representing the Democrat National Committee say the complaints alleging faulty voter roll cleanup are purely political theater. That's not the case, folks. We're getting ready to run into 2024, which is probably, I'm even going to say it, the most important vote in my lifetime, and I've been on this earth for about half a century, a little more, give or take, and yet these people are trying to say, oh no, we don't need to clean up the voter rolls. We don't need to worry about that. We don't need to worry about collusion with the federal government either. Okay? I got something on that here in just a minute. But here, I'm having a very difficult time. Of course, I have a difficult time with leftists anyway. Okay, but I'm having a difficult time with the idea that doing something that is going to almost assuredly make certain that every ballot is filed by a legal U.S. alive and present in that state, that every vote is going to be counted properly, and that person is able to actually vote, and they're going to argue against it. Now, the reason for this will become clear in a little bit also, but I also want to point out, too, that there's a few flaws within the system as well, but this is just the beginning. They talk about voter integrity and election integrity and how 2020 was the most secure election ever. And then they do stuff like this. This in Just the News. Federal government is working with left-wing groups to implement Biden bucks. You know what Biden bucks is? Biden bucks is essentially attempting to get people who normally wouldn't be able to vote to vote. For an example, the executive order for Biden bucks was based on an initiative by a progressive group, Demos. One of the key topics being pushed is having felons' voting rights restored. One of the representatives at the DOJ attended meeting said felony disenfranchisement is voter suppression. The federal government is working, and the Justice Department have worked with left-wing organizations to determine how to implement Biden's executive order to use the federal government to register voters, which began after one of those groups aided the Biden administration with creating the executive order. So the order, Executive Order 14019, often referred to as critics by Biden bucks, which alludes to Zuckerbucks, the approximately $400 million Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg widely alleged to have funneled through left-leaning nonprofits to turn out the Democrat vote in 2020. That's what it's named after. According to the executive order, the head of each agency shall evaluate ways in which the agency can, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, promote voter registration and voter participation, including soliciting and facilitating approved nonpartisan third-party organizations and state officials to provide voter registration services on agency premises. Now, here's the thing. How much do you want to bet that that is not a nonpartisan third-party scenario? How much do you want to bet that all of those organizations that are going in there are not, as they call them, nonpartisan? Now, Zuckerbucks, this is in the piece, Zuckerbucks came to notice, when it came to the forefront, I should say, when the Center for Tech and Civic Life poured about $350 million into local elections offices managing the 2020 elections, with most of the funds donated to the nonprofit by Zuckerberg. The nonprofit claimed its 2020 election grants were allocated without partisan preference to make voting safer amid the pandemic. But we also know that a House Republican investigation found that less than 1% of the funds were actually spent on personal protective equipment. Most of the funds were focused on getting out the vote efforts and registrations, and this is the key, in areas heavily leaning towards Democrat candidates. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So here we have the Biden administration doing something very, very similar to that. Now, this particular meeting, which this is where it all got started, was that the voter registration meeting raises eyebrows on Capitol Hill. And so House Republicans are now going to investigate the Biden administration ahead of the 2024 election because they are raising concerns over revelations from documents reported by the Washington Examiner about a key meeting between White House and left-wing activists on voter registration. Now, if it had been a bipartisan group that came to the White House, I think they probably wouldn't have raised the red flag. But again, they're pointing at this executive order, and it's obvious that it's left-wing activists that are being included in these groups. Now, again, folks, was the election secure in all areas? I don't know. I don't think there is enough there, or let me back up. I do think there's enough there to warrant investigations. I do think there's plenty of evidence, whether circumstantial or not, to at least open up the door to potential investigations to understand. And then you have something like this, which came out in the Federalist. More than 200,000 people on North Carolina voter rolls missing ID numbers. Now, by missing ID numbers, they're saying that the voter data lists more than 224,000 records since 2004 that are missing both a social security number and a driver's license number. Now, this is just in North Carolina. This isn't the only place that this is going on. It's going on everywhere. They're going through and they've found voters on voter rolls that have been there, that have been dead for many years. They found voters on voter rolls that apparently have voted, by the way, that are moved out of the state. They've had all kinds of issues with voter rolls, and yet, according to the Democrats, our elections are perfectly secure, and that 2020 was the most secure ever. But one thing that you need to understand is that this isn't because of something recent. There's actually two laws that came into effect at different times that have helped perpetuate a lot of this situation. Okay? One of them was the 2002 Help America Vote Act, known as HAVA, which required states to verify certain information of newly registered voters for federal election, according to the Social Security Administration. Each state must establish a computerized statewide voter registration list and verify new voter information with, and this is the other law, this is the second law, the state's motor vehicle administration, in terms of they've got to check with people who are giving out driver's license. Now, the second law is known as the motor voter law, which that was back in, I got another article on that. We'll find out about that. I think it was either 1993, 1993, I think is when that went into effect. But anyway, So here's the thing, and this is essentially the entire part. So back in the early 90s, right before Clinton got voted into office the first time, okay, they instituted this thing called the Motor Vehicle Registration Act, which essentially means that anybody that goes in for a driver's license is supposed to automatically have the opportunity to register to vote. But here's the problem. This is where I think this is a real problem, and this is part of the reason why I do not advocate for voter ID to be the driver's license. Here's part of the problem with that. And what I'm showing up on the screen now, for those of you who are on the audio only portion of the program, is a map of the United States with 3 different colors. And I recommend that if you can, head on over to Rumble and check about the 35-minute mark or so of after the start of the show, and you can go and check out the map. But if you look at this map, this is where voter identification is required by state. And as you can see, most, if not all, of the blue states, actually most of them, because I think I see Wisconsin in there, but most of the states that are colored blue, which require voter ID, are what would be considered red states. There are other states that allow you to vote that are non-photo ID, meaning that you can just prove that you're a resident of the state. As I pointed out to you in past times, Arizona is one of those, where you don't have to have a picture, okay, on your ID. You can just get any sort of ID, or in some cases, you just prove that you live in the state, that you're a state resident or state citizen, in order to be able to, which could be, like a electrical bill or a mortgage or something, a house bill or something along those lines, some way to show that you're a resident of the state. And then there's a bunch of gray states in here which don't require any voter ID at all. And if you'll notice, the number of states that don't require voter ID at all, well, they're mostly blue states, if not all blue states. Yeah. So this is where voter ID becomes extremely important. But what's even worse about all this is the fact that many of these states, especially the ones in the gray areas, they don't even ask for proof of citizenship at the driver's license place. So as long as you can go and pass the driver's license test, whether you're a citizen or not, you can prove that you live in that state. You get a driver's license, you pass the test, you pass the written, you pass the driving. Then, before you get your ID, you are asked to say, do you want to register to vote? And if so, are you a U.S. citizen? And it's a checkbox. There's no proof required. It's basically just on the honor system. It's basically just the honor system that this goes on. So here, this article that came out also in the Federalist, and it's titled, "To Confirm Voters' U.S. Citizenship, States Could Easily Check DMV Data." Well, the problem with that is, not really. And the reason being is because of the fact that, again, it depends. It depends on whether or not the state actually does verify citizenship. This is part of the reason why I keep saying, look, just make the passport free to everyone. The U.S. passport. Just make it free to everyone, which, by the way, another thing that kind of sparked me thinking about this was the fact that I saw a post where here by one of my one of our local news outlets that said, "Oh, the Real ID Act is coming in 2025." And the thing about it is that the Real ID Act is designed to make you fly now, or to allow you to fly domestically. Now, here's the thing. Some states, their, quote, Real ID, which it has to have certain features set out by the Real ID Act to the federal government, and the state of Washington in particular has been pushing this off more and more. Now, I personally have a driver's license that conforms with the Real ID Act. They call it here in the state an enhanced driver's license. But the thing about it is that the enhanced driver's license is an additional charge. Now, if you really want to verify citizenship, I'm saying that the only way to make absolutely 100% sure is to have a U.S. passport, because the U.S. passport does do all of that. So to me, the U.S. government should just be, hey, we're going to give out U.S. passports to everybody who's a citizen. And by the way, that is the only legally required ID when you go to vote. That eliminates and takes out everything for the most part. Because now what you have is you have a photo ID that has been verified that also verifies citizenship, all in one form. And forget the idea of this Real ID. Just say, hey, if you're going to fly or travel at any time, you need your passport. Pretty damn simple. It's a simple, effective answer. And again, if you make it free to everyone, and make it available to everyone, shouldn't be much of a problem for the majority, the vast majority of people who are out there who want to vote and who want to travel. Now, in this piece where they talk about the motor voter laws, just to give you an idea, since the Biden administration rolled out Executive Order 14019, which we just talked about, which commandeers political appointees and federal agencies to get into the business of registering voters at taxpayer expense, voter disenfranchisement concerns have skyrocketed among election security groups around the country. That's with good reason, because many states are refusing to comply with what's called Section 8 of the National, what is it? Hold on. I got to find it. Yeah, the National Voter Registration Act, which was enacted in 1993 and expanded in 1996, by the way. So many states don't use what they call legal presence codes provided by the DMV. That's number one. But also, many states refuse to comply with Section 8, like I was just saying, and reveal to the public their process for removing ineligible voter rolls or voters from their rolls. Pennsylvania admitted to accidentally registering some 90,000 non-citizens via a motor voter automated registration, like I just described, where it's just a checkbox. It could be in a different language, too, and somebody just checks the box. Pennsylvania legislators and civics groups are currently in litigation over the plan and are asking the Supreme Court to review the constitutionality of the executive order over its apparent intent to target Democrat-leaning populations with registration materials. And that's, of course, the whole thing that I was pointing out. If they did it actually nonpartisan, I think we'd be fine. Now, Virginia is actually doing something right here. In the article, Virginia election officials have confirmed they are now adding a validation check against DMV's legal presence codes as part of a modernization program the state launched after it exited the controversial Electronic Registration Information Center, known as ERIC, in 2023. The multi-state voter roll maintenance partnership has been criticized, this is for ERIC, has been criticized for pushing expansive voter registration efforts, particularly a requirement that member states reach out to eligible but unregistered voters from lists compiled out of ERIC. Problem is that many of these type voters that ERIC member states are required to send registration materials have already declined to register because they are not citizens. So in Virginia, Public Interest Legal Foundation discovered that Virginia had to filter out more than 168,000 ineligible voters from its unregistered but eligible voter list, thanks to the DMV legal presence codes. And the PILF, their research also found similar problems in Colorado, which sent registration cards to more than 30,000 foreign nationals from ERIC's UBE data that comes in from sources such as DMV's Motor Voter. All of this is just amazing to me. Now, states can do even more, according to this. States can do even more to fix the DMV glitch that automatically sends non-citizens to voter rolls via DMV records, and for general maintenance of those rolls once it receives no answer, or no answer, meaning no in quote, no, like no, the answer no, to the citizenship question on motor voter registration data. Virginia in particular now cross-references that list with the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements database, which is a save-in database of immigration status operated by the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that need to be tightened up in terms of voting in order for all of this to clean up a lot of these roles. And so for the left to sit here and say that these people, these illegals in particular, are not going to be able to vote. And I've already talked to you about Arizona. I've already mentioned about the whole thing with Arizona, where if you don't prove that you're a citizen in Arizona, they just hand you a federal only ballot. They won't let you vote in the state for state run stuff, but they'll hand you a federal ballot. And yet here we have other states across the U.S. that I know for a fact Washington doesn't even really, I'll be honest with you, I don't think they even care, because I've never been asked to provide an updated signature for my mail-in ballot. And even though I've voted in every single important election, okay, I have never been asked to provide an updated registration card with my proper signature on it. And believe me, my signature has changed in the 20 plus years that I've lived here, that I've been registered to vote. Something like that could even make it easier for someone else to be able to hijack my ballot. Because my signature, I can almost certainly guarantee you it's not going to come close enough to match what I signed 20 years ago or even 15 years ago. Now, I mentioned the PILF, the Public Interest Legal Foundation. Well, they have a link, which I put in the show notes, where it talks about just this: foreign nationals voting in American elections. Let me show you. Foreign nationals register to vote and cast ballots far more often than what you would think. The PILF has been documenting this problem for over the past decade in states around the country. We regularly collect government records of foreigners writing to election officials admitting that they should not have been registered to vote and asking to be removed from the voter rolls. Now, the reason why this is the case is because the naturalization process requires aliens to disclose whether they have been registered to vote. If applicants lie about this easily verifiable question, they risk not being able to become a citizen as well as outright deportation. I doubt that under the current administration. So there is an incentive, they say, for foreigners to seek removal from the voter rolls. What about the ones that come here that are not looking for naturalization, that don't want to become American citizens? What about those people? Well, anyway, they go into, in this article, in this posting, they go into how foreigners are getting on the voter roll. The number one cause of foreigners getting on voter rolls is motor voter, formerly known as the National Voter Registration Act, which is the federal law that requires state DMV offices to offer voter registration. The cause for improper registration can arise from something simple as checking the wrong box or signing the wrong form handed out by a state employee, sometimes in a different language. If an applicant fills out the federal motor voter registration form completely, they must, according to the law, be registered to vote, period. It also says states cannot seek documentary proof of citizenship before registering the applicant. Only an honor system prevents foreign citizens from easily registering to vote. All they need to do is mark the box yes that they are a United States citizen. And there it is. Therein lies the problem. Now, Coco Domingue is right. Illegal or non-citizens shouldn't vote. You're correct. But here's the thing. Knowing that this allows them to get registered quite easily, by the way, okay, quite easily, that this allows that to happen. Because again, driver's licenses are pretty much handed out oftentimes like candy to people. They're not even, I mean, it's anybody who, citizen or non-citizen, can obtain a driver's license in most states. But here's the thing. If you don't have a way to validate that person when they show up at the voting booth, if you still have in-person voting, or better yet, if you're an all mail-in ballot state like my state is, how are you ever going to know that ballot has been sent by, has been written out by, filled out by the actual person or a valid U.S. citizen to vote? And it's getting even worse because places like California, for an example, have cities that are currently allowing people who are non-citizens to vote in local elections. And now you have the confusion of local elections on top of federal elections. And I'm sure that California, being the green state that it is not going to go and print up a separate ballot and a separate envelope and a separate whatever to save paper. Because, green is the way to go. Green planet. They're not going to print up all those separate ballots in order to allow just a non-citizen to vote in just a local election, because that would be a waste of money, a waste of resources, and a waste of them being green. So I'm sure they're putting it all on the same ballot. That would be something that they would do, is they would just put it all on the same ballot and just say, hey, you can't vote in this. But how do you know? Again, without having a voter ID to ensure that that person is an actual citizen. And again, I go back to the idea that even with driver's licenses, somebody presents a driver's license, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a citizen. That just means they've passed a driver's license exam, unless, of course, you are a state that has some sort of identification in terms of the citizenship. So according to this article continuing, it also says sometimes election officials are to blame. In some states, if the citizenship question is left blank, election officials register the applicant anyway. Across other states, we've collected a staggering number of voter registration forms where the registrant answered no to the citizenship question, but the government still registered them to vote. Wait, what? During their collection of evidence, they found some states a staggering number of voter registration forms where the government went ahead and just registered? Oh my gosh. States adopting automatic voter registration, which most everybody does, risk making the problem even worse. Now, they have a solution here. It's pretty simple. Very simple, actually. The Public Interest Legal Foundation basically states that Congress can easily solve this problem by allowing states to validate citizenship effectively. This could be as easy as, oh my gosh, providing a passport, birth certificate, or naturalization certificate when registering to vote. Here's another straightforward fix, according to the article, is to add citizenship to the National Voter Registration Act's reasonable list maintenance requirements. States would have an obligation to reasonably maintain voter rolls free from foreigners. Currently, the law only requires states to have a reasonable program to remove deceased individuals and people who have moved from the voter roll. So here is something that I want to point out really, really quickly, is the fact that we have close to 10 million illegal aliens that have come into this country, if not more. We don't even know, honestly, the full number. But any of these people can go to the DMV, get a driver's license in some states, I'm going to say in most states, because not all states require you to have a proof of citizenship. They can hit this checkbox, whether on purpose or accidentally, and become, and they don't even, in some states, they don't even need to do that. And they automatically get registered to vote. And now all of a sudden they get a ballot. So how can you say with any sense of intelligent, rational, and logical thought that the U.S. election system is totally secure? You can't. It's impossible. And this is just one angle, one methodology to prove that point. Folks, I'm telling you, we have got to get a majority of people into our government who are going to actually take these these things, these items, and take them under advisement and actually do something about it. I understand the intent for like the motor voter registration deal. I understand that. And I have a recollection of it, early when it was being argued and talked about and stuff. And it sounded like a great idea. But just like anything, in theory, it sounds great. But in reality, there's a lot of holes that need to be plugged. And our government is extremely slow, at a snail's pace, to plug them. All right, I am out of time. I do appreciate all of you for coming, all of my Whiskey Warriors, and for anyone who is watching the program for the first time, if you enjoy it, please do me a favor, run on over to rumble.com, sign up for an account, it's free, and then find American Perspective channel. Make sure you hit that green follow button. If you are already on Rumble, and do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button. You got to be signed in to do it, but hit that thumbs up button because that is one of the main tracking items that Rumble uses in order to bring my videos to a larger audience, and I do appreciate all of that. Another quick shout out to X. I have a person on X. It's Old School Eddie. I saw him go ahead and like reshare repost my link here. So I do appreciate that. I appreciate all my X watchers as well. Have a great rest of your evening, and I'll be back tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern Time for another session of American Perspective with Rick Thomas. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.